So today we've got verses 10, 11, and 12 of chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Kshetrakya Vibhag Yoga. I'll start with verse number 10. Asakteran Bhishavangaha Putradara Grihadishu Nityam cha samchettatvam Ishtanishthopatishu. So the verse translates to non-attachment, non-infatuation, or non-identification with son, wife, home, and constant balance of mind in desirable and undesirable happenings or occurrences or circumstances. So let's take this up word by word. Asakti is without attachment or non-attachment. Anbhishwang is non-infatuation or non-identification with. Putrudar Graha Dishu. So Putra is son, Udar is wife, Griha is home, Dishu is in. So Putrudar Griha Dishu becomes in son, wife, or home, Nityam constant, cha and Samchittatvam. So Sam is balance, Chittatvam becomes is balance, is mind. So Samchittatvam becomes balance of mind. Isht is what is desirable. Anisht is what is non-desirable. And upaptishu is happenings or whatever is coming our way. So whatever occurrences, circumstances we are facing. So isht, anisht, uppitashu becomes indesirable and undesirable happenings. So the verse translates to non-attachment, non-infatuation or non-identification with son, wife, home, and constant balance of mind in desirable and undesirable circumstances or happenings or occurrences. So let's chant it together. Asaktaran Bhishwangaha Putrudara Grihadishu Nityam Jasam Chitatvam Ishtanishtopatishu. So three more qualities are coming our way. Let's take them up. Asakti is non-attachment. And so to understand non-attachment, we must first understand that what is attachment. What, we get attached to something when we start working from the level of the mind. So on the basis of the likes and dislikes. And the discrimination is not being used. So you are diabetic, the doctor has said no sweets. Some prasad comes at home and you say, wow, this is nice kasar. You have a spoonful. Then the mind, you savor, you see the indriyarthe, that the sense of taste enjoys the kasar and you say, okay, why not another spoonful? Mind is telling you that, the intellect says, no, the doctor has said no sweets and you've already had one spoonful. So now it is up to you whether you let the mind rule or you let the intellect rule. So if you're wise, you will not have the next spoonful. The nature of the mind is to indiscriminately follow the sense organs and you get attached to the world. So the example that I gave you was a very mundane example. And in the verse, the examples that we have got are more non-trivial. So you get attached to your family, your spouse, and your home. And you treat yourself or them as a part of you. Now, before we discuss that, we must also understand that detachment also arises from attachment. And how does this work? When we attach ourselves or our mind and intellect to a higher value item, the lower value item automatically falls off. This we have been discussing, I think, in almost all the sessions that we've been having. So just as the toddler gives away, the toddler's toys give way to tricycles and uh, uh, other, higher value items. Preschool gives way to school, to college, to university. And not only in these sequence of things, but even as new discoveries make the old discoveries, uh, you know, uh, even redundant or modified, they are corrected. So even in this, we have umpteen number of examples. So we used to have those bulky radios, you may recollect. We used to have cameras with the films. I mean, the resolution still might be good, but most of us are very happy with our phones these days, our mobiles. How the landline phones gave way to mobiles, and also the computers, how they have shrunk over decades. So what is happening is that we are adopting the higher inventions, and we are not sticking around and getting attached to the old instruments or the old appliances, and other than they being relics or museum pieces, right? So always a higher value item invention will replace the lower one. So a Gyani keeps refining and evolving and keeps shedding attachments as he moves on his or her spiritual journey. So this was one quality, asakti, non-attachment to anything. Anbhishwang putra dar griha dishu. So non-identification with son, wife, and home. So as I just mentioned, son, spouse, home are areas where the mind becomes easily attached. And in ancient civilizations, especially ours, and to a certain extent, even till today, the value system is carried on. The unit is not an individual, it is a family. We treat the whole family as one unit. That is the parivar, that is the unit, not like the Western civilizations where the unit is the individual. So we are talking from that point of view. And when the example is being given of a wife and son, so we can modify it to spouse and children. They imply all relationships that we are actually living or we are facing. So we spontaneously identify with this family as mine, same thing as my home. Uh, and we start feeling possessive towards these things. Our mind is always lingering on them, and we are worried about both. I mean, the important relationships, the family, immediate family, and the home. Now, the problem with this is that, of course, it causes agitation. So even if you're traveling, you're worried what is happening at home. How is my family all right? I mean, suppose you're traveling alone. Is my family all right? Has the maid landed up? You're worried. So this attachment causes worry in us. And it also causes expectations of reciprocal behavior from the family members, which may or may not happen. If it happens, okay, fine. If it does not happen, then we get agitated that I do so much and you don't do anything. That kind of an attitude comes to us. We start thinking like that. And also, our family is not permanent. There will be separation from my family. So my children may go outside, and your parents, they may or may not be there. I mean, as per the law of life, they will leave you and go away. So this will happen. So whether it's permanent or impermanent separation, it will always be there. So these thoughts and apprehensions, because of these thoughts, they agitate the mind and they tend to drag it away from God, because the family, the house, everything is actually in the world. It's an object in the world. Therefore, if we are looking for immortal bliss, we must practice prudence while we are interacting with our spouse, child, and home, to become to prevent the mind from being entangled. It does not mean that you start ignoring your family or your home or your environment, whatever it is. You must do your duty towards them. All obligatory actions must be done, but without attachment. The love should not be corrupted, and it should not become attachment. Just as the way the nurse does his or her duty in the hospital towards a patient, a teacher does his or her duty towards students in a classroom, they remain objective in and through their actions. So this was non-identification or non-infatuation with son, wife, and home. The third quality that this verse is mentioning is nityam samchittam ishta nishto patisu, or constant balance of mind in desirable and undesirable happenings. All right. So, see, pleasure and pain will come our way just as night follows day and day follows night. This is life. All of us are in the same world, we have the same experiences, and we know that joy will be followed by sorrow, and sorrow will be followed by joy. There's nothing permanent in this life. And dualities will be there. These are the pairs of opposites. We must enhance our spiritual strength by becoming detached towards the world, and then we will earn or develop the ability to remain balanced or unperturbed in life's reversals, and also not losing our balance when we get success. So in both success and failure, we remain balanced or equanimous. A wise person or a jnani at all times maintains a perfect balance within himself through the fluctuations of the external world. And see, we interact with a lot of people during the course of the day, and our emotions change, and with some we maintain our equanimity, with others we start getting agitated. The same thing happens to a jnani. The jnani also interacts with a lot of people during the course of the day and life, and undergoes different experiences of the world. Even towards him, some people are friendly and others are not. Some encounters are desirable and others are undesirable. But the jnani is equanimous in all these encounters and all these happenings. What happens, the difference between with us is that when we move out into the world, we want to repeat the desirable experiences, that same kasar example, and we want to avoid the undesirable ones. So I don't like my neighbor's face, I want to ignore the neighbor, right? So this reinforces our likes and dislikes. Likes and dislikes are at the level of the mind and not at the level of the intellect. And even our friends, we choose as per our likes and dislikes. So our friends are those who cater to our likes and dislikes. And consequently, these likes and dislikes of ours become a menacing force, and they cause mental agitation whenever they're not met, which naturally leads us to a lot of agitation. Also, the world has control over us now. So if I don't like the neighbor, I don't want to see the neighbor, and suppose the neighbor is there, I get agitated. Okay. So we become weak. We are not able to see one person and say a good morning to that person. That should not happen. The Jnani who is rooted in God is not affected by these variations and maintains his mental equilibrium. He treats life as a play or a leela and not as a war that you have to, set people right and they should cater to you and things of that kind. So this is the Nityam Samchittam Ishtanishto Pa Patisu. So these are three more qualities which come our way. And all these three qualities, interestingly, were also there in the Bhakti Yoga chapter. And I'll draw the parallel. So you, when you're looking or revising, you can look up your notes. So Asakti, for the Bhakta, Sang Vivarjita was used. Then for okay, this was not specifically mentioned, non-identification and non-infatuation with son, wife, and home. So there I stand corrected. This one was not mentioned for a bhakti yoga, for a bhakta. Then the last one in this verse, Nityam Samchittam. Okay, so for a bhakta, what was mentioned was Samha Shatro Cha Mitre Cha Tatha Manap Manayo Shitoshan Sukh Dukheshu. So you are balanced with a friend or a foe and in the pairs of opposites. Man Apman, so honor, dishonor. Shitoshan, so cold and hot. Sukh and dukh, sorrow, happiness and sorrow. So this was verse number 10. Moving on to verse number 11, I will chant. Mai chananya yogena bhaktiravyabhicharani विवेक्तदेशसेवे त्वम् artirjan sansadi. So the verse translates to unswerving devotion to me by steadfast yoga, resorting to solitary place and distaste for crowd of people. So let's take this up word by word. Mai to me, cha and Ananya Yogen. So Anya is others. Ananya becomes without others. Yogen is union. So Ananya Yogen means by steadfast yog or by exclusive yog to me. So Mai was to me, right? Bhakti is devotion. Avyabhicharani is what does not meander, it does not waver. Uh, Vicharani is wavering. Avyabhicharani becomes unwavering. Vivikta desha se vittam. So this means that, resorting to a solitary place. Vivikta is solitary. Desha se is a place. Vivittam is inclination for. So the word means resorting to a solitary place. Arati is distaste. Jan Sansadi is crowd of people. So the verse translates to unswerving devotion to me by steadfast yoga, resorting to solitary place and distaste for crowd of people. So let's chant it together. Mai chananya yogena bhakterivaya bhichari विवेक देश से वेद वृत्तम हरतिर्जन संसदी. So now three more qualities are being presented in this verse. And what is happening now is that the previous verse talked about living without attachment, having non-attachment towards your family, home, etc. So the qualities of this verse are actually talking about how to live without attachment, without identification with objects and beings, in isolation. So if you see all the qualities that when we translate it are talking about isolation, solitude. Isolation is a stronger term, but being in solitude. So let's take them up one by one. Mai ananya yogen bhaktir avya vicharini. So unswerving devotion to me by steadfast yoga. Now, I would like to highlight, because these words are used again and again, and though we keep discussing them when we are reading them in as we progress, but we tend to forget them. So we will go slow on this one. Use of the word me. Me is with a capital me, where Krishna means God, self, Atman and Paramatman, or it is the supreme self in all beings. So whenever Krishna is using the word me in the Bhagavad Gita, he is talking from the level of the pure consciousness, from the level of the Paramatman. So he is merged, he is that pure consciousness. And therefore he uses the word me. He is one with the self. Krishna has transcended the body, mind, and intellect and has merged with God. He has reached that original state. The same holds true for the masters like Lord Buddha, Jesus Christ, Guru Nanak. I mean, so when they talk from that level, they are talking from the merger level. They have merged with that Brahman. They are that God. It is only us who have not reached that state. We have not merged with God. So we see God and me as different. And not only that, we see different personalities of all the people around us. And we see ourselves different from God because of what? What is it that is hampering us from saying that I am that God? Anyone would like to answer that?
The vasanas.
The vasanas, the impurities, they are what are preventing me from being one with that God, because my vasanas are taking me out into the world, and to that extent I'm impure. The second word that we have been using is yoga. Continuously, we have been talking about yoga, and it's not that physical yoga that we talk, the set of exercises that is the term has been used as a Western concept to market that entire set of exercises. Yoga, if we analyze, the root is the Sanskrit word yuj, which means to unite. So to unite to what? Unite to that supreme self. So yoga is the process of union of our individual self with that Paramatman. So all of us, you see, we are all in the world. If you ask any human being, he or she is seeking happiness and bliss, which lasts. It's not like you buy a new car and then you are happy with it for some time, and then you see the neighbors has bought a better car than yours. Then the happiness goes, and now you envy. You start envying. So we all are looking for that permanent happiness and bliss, because our true nature is that. You see, we are enabled by Paramatman. Paramatman is complete, pure, perfect. That is the natural state. But we don't feel like that. Why? As we just mentioned, because we are covered by vasanas and desires. So our natural state is corrupted by introducing desires and vasanas on us. So that extra bit of mango, wealth, power, position, whatever you're seeking in the world is actually corrupting our activity. So if we direct all our actions to God, that corruption goes. And some many moons ago, as I think Jungle Book would, Mowgli would say, we had done this equation that God, when desires are added to God, we become a human being. So God plus desire is equal to human. So if you use this equation, take the desire to the other side. So human minus God, minus desire becomes God. So now we are that, we come from that permanent state of bliss and happiness. That is our natural state. So we will keep searching it till we reach that state. So all the efforts that we do at the level of the body, mind, and intellect to unite and merge with God are termed yoga or yoga. So yoga means the technique, discipline, and the path to unite with God. Practices of karma yoga or the path of action at the level of the body, bhakti yoga or the path of devotion at the level of the mind, and jnana yoga or the path of knowledge at the level of the intellect help us in purifying ourselves, removing our vasanas. So how this works is that these three processes of karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga firstly help us in reducing our desires. The next thing is that we start becoming withdrawing from the world. So we start becoming introverts. This leads to gaining equanimity, balance, peace of mind. In that state, our intellect and mind is available to focus on the supreme self. It is only a controlled mind that can rest on self. And in that state, we will be able to, reach or try to reach or experience that original state of absolute peace and bliss. This is the state which Krishna has reached. And, and this is what he means when he says me. So this is yoga, union with the self, with God. Then the other thing we have been talking about continuously is unswerving devotion. So in yoga, we are directing our body, mind, and intellect towards the supreme reality, pure consciousness. This practice of yoga must be constant and unswerving. It is a 24/7 activity. It's a full-time practice and not a part-time hobby. And with this practice, there should be no otherness or distractions. And that is why if you, if you think in the previous verse, we had talked about your family and your home. Those are, I think, one of the biggest attachments that we have. So unswerving devotion means exclusive attention on God. And how this is to be done? Again, that is coming out through bhakti. And a whole chapter, which we just finished, chapter 12 is devoted to devotion. So when we talk of devotion, so when you're, devoted to a beloved, all our thoughts are on the beloved. And we are constantly thinking of what he or she would be doing, what he or she would be eating, what he or she would be living like if we are separated for some time, right? And of course, when we are with the beloved, then we are, we are all entangled in the relationship in any case. Now, instead of what this verse is saying, that instead of being devoted to a lover, a child, or a family, become devoted to God. We do all our obligatory duties towards the people and the relationships that we are in. But the devotion is towards God. And also we must learn from experience. You cannot have two lovers. Okay. Similarly, you cannot be, either you are devoted to God or you are devoted to objects of the world. We cannot be devoted to more than one thing at a time. So it is exclusive devotion. And in the Bhakti Yoga chapter, Lord Krishna, verse number 2, Lord Krishna had said that he considers those steadfast devotees who worship him with Shraddha to be the best in yoga. So this was the first quality in this verse, unswerving devotion to me by steadfast yoga. Next quality is Vivakti Deshe se Vivitam, Vitvam actually. So resorting to a solitary place. Now what has happened is that we have silenced our mind and we are focused internally, or a jnani is focused internally and is resting on Brahman. So God is his companion, is his or her companion. So the jnani is reveling in the companionship with God. And he or she is never lonely and is not in need for company of human beings. See, when you're in the company of Lord Krishna, why would you seek someone in the world? You would be reveling in that company. So, and Lord Krishna is within us, within all of us. So we are resting within ourselves. So a wise person prefers solitude so that the person can continue reveling in God. We, on the other hand, we prefer company because we are unable to be with ourselves. We are not self-sufficient. My vasanas and my desires start agitating me if I'm just sitting by myself. And if not fulfilled, I mean, so either we are seeking an object, we are actually always seeking an object of the world, be it a physical object or another person. So we start feeling lonely. So to that extent, we lack self-sufficiency, which the wise person has. So a jnani is self-sufficient, and because he or she is self-sufficient, they are strong. The only support that the jnani takes is the support of the Lord himself. And therefore, he prefers solitude. And this quality and the next one actually will remind you, do they remind you of any chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that we have done? Anyone would like to answer that? Okay.
Dhyan Yoga.
Absolutely. Brilliant. They are the qualities of the Dhyan Yoga chapter, chapter 6. And the verse number 3 of chapter 6, I'm reading out the translation for you. For a seeker who wishes to master yoga, action is said to be the means. And for the one who is established in yoga, quietude is said to be the means. Right? So till the time we are hankering with about the world, we have to act to fulfill our desires and sublimate them. But once we have reached that state, and we established in yoga, then we will be quiet by ourselves. And that brings us to the last quality in this verse, arthar jan sansadi, or distaste for a crowd of people. So a materialistic mind is always thinking of the world and what the world has to offer and the people of the world. So it is always involved in the worldly affairs. But one who has mastered through Karma Yoga, has done the course reversal. That means moved from extroverted pursuits to introverted pursuits. He is no longer really concerned. He has developed a dispassion towards the world and the happenings in the world. So the verse is not literally to be the verse is not to be, or the quality is not to be taken literally. That means that the Jnani goes around hating people and is obnoxious to them. No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that the Jnani is not seeking the people, because the Jnani is self-sufficient and is content and happy within himself and herself. And that brings us to the last verse for the day, verse number 12. I will chant. Adhyatma-jnana-nityatvam tattva-jnanartha-darshanam etajnanmiti proktam Jnanam yad to anyatha. So only two qualities are now coming our way, and the verse translates to constancy in self-knowledge, perception of the end of true knowledge. This is declared to be knowledge. What is opposed to this is ignorance. Brilliant verse, actually. So let's take this up word by word. Adhyatma Gyan Nitya Nityam Nityatvam. Right? So Adhyatma is the spiritual. Gyan is knowledge. Nityatvam is constancy or consistency. So Adhyatma Gyan and Nityatvam becomes constancy in self-knowledge. Tattva Gyan Arth Darshanam. This means Tattva is essence. Gyan is knowledge. So Tattva Gyan becomes knowledge of the truth. Arth is perception of the end of this knowledge of the truth. Darshanam is seeing it. So the words Tattva Gyan, Arth, Darshanam become perception of the end of true knowledge. Etad, this Jnanam, knowledge. Iti, thus. Proktam is declared. Ajnanam is ignorance. So what is not Gyan is ignorance. Yat, which. Ataha, than this. Anyatha is what opposes or is contrary. So constancy in self-knowledge, perception of the end of true knowledge. This is declared to be knowledge. What is opposed to this is ignorance. So let's chant it together. Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam Etaj Jnanmiti hi Proktam Ajnanam Yad To Anyatha. So actually the verse has only two more qualities, but to understand these qualities, we will do a bit of revision and we may exceed, we may be short on the question answer bit, so that we'll see as we reach that stage. So I'm going to revise with you the three words. Revise is because we've already revised, we have already read this, and we are revisiting it. So this is a revision. The words are Brahm, Adhyatma, and Karma. Now, the word Adhyatma was used as far back as chapter 7, which was the Jnana Vigyan Yoga, and it was towards the end of that chapter in verse number 29, where Lord had said that those striving for liberation from old age, death, take refuge in me, realizing the Brahman or the which is the whole, Adhyatma, the individual self, and all actions. So this is what this was the first time that we have come across the word Adhyatma in the Bhagavad Gita. And what it meant was that when we are performing physical and mental actions or karma, mindful of God, they lead us further on the path of yoga, and we are enabled to start the meditation, okay, which leads us to ourselves, which is Adhyatma. And also through us, as we go internally, as we go inside us, we reach that Brahman, which enables us. And then all our fears are gone. And fear is typically of old age, death, etc., which the verse mentions. Chapter 8 had started with Arjun asking, 6 terms. So what is Brahman? That whole Adhyatma and Karma. These were the thing, and there were 3 more words that he had used, but those are not really relevant now. So what is relevant in the current context is Brahman, the indestructible, changeless, the supreme, Adhyatma. When that changeless supreme manifests in beings, so his nature when manifested, Karma is the cause of birth and death. See why it's the cause of birth and death? is because when we act, if we are not sublimating our desires and vasanas, we are creating new ones. So the new vasanas will have to be satisfied at some point of time. So we will, so either they are satisfied in the current birth, and if we reach that stage where, you know, our indriyas are not functioning and we are not able to satisfy those vasanas now or desires in this birth, we will take the next birth to continue. So with our vasana. So suppose my vasana was to, you know, I should have been born in the US of A. This birth was in India. So maybe next birth, I might be born there. So that is how we will achieve what we are seeking. So this is how karma is the cause of the birth of beings. Now, the verse is talking about Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam, which is consistency in self-knowledge. So in the self-knowledge, action, the karma part is now out. I was just revising so that we are clear as to why that part has to go. Action towards a goal should happen by itself. And that is what was covered in chapters 3, 4, and 5. Right? Now we come to Brahm and Adhyatma. So Brahm or Brahman is that ultimate reality which is supporting the entire creation. And Adhyatma is the inner self, which is me. You know, when that whole is being channeled through my body. So it is like the electricity that is being supplying through a grid to the entire city. But the meter to my home is supplying that same electricity to my house. Okay, so that is the difference. And just as we are always worried about what's happening in the world, so you start off reading the newspaper and you end your day by looking at the news on the either on the TV or on your mobiles. We are constantly as if, you know, the world would have changed if we had not read the news or we were not aware of things. So fine, it's nice to be aware of what is happening in the world, but we must also daily and consistently and constantly be in pursuit of the knowledge of the self by reading our scriptures, by listening to our gurus and imbibing the same. So a jnani is constantly in pursuit of this knowledge of the self or the knowledge of the inner self, and through it, the ultimate reality. Then the last bit is that Tattva Gyan Arth Darshanam, perception of the end of true knowledge. So this knowledge ends, okay? And now let's look at this. See, reflection on the point, the previous quality is telling us to reflect on the qualities of the scriptures and the pointers which the scriptures and the gurus have given us. That once we start thinking, we start looking for answers to who am I? What is it that makes me human? How am I different from animals? What is the purpose of my life? So when we start contemplating on these questions, we also start asking, what are we? What are we made of? What is our nature? And this is all what we've been reading in Bhagavad Gita. That is what is being explained to us. So this is the knowledge, or this is Adhyatma, where we start knowing ourselves, our essence or Tattva. So this is the essence. So Adhyatma and Tattva are synonyms here. And also Tattva is linked to that Brahman. So in this process of getting Adhyatma and understanding our Tattva, our essence, we start getting glimpses of God or Brahman. So as we proceed further on the spiritual journey, we start shedding attachments with the matter and start getting liberated. And liberation means what? Our focus is shifting from body to God. And that is what was said in that verse, when you are liberated from the fear of old age, death, etc., etc. So the body or the kshetra is removed from our quest. We know that this is the kshetra. So we reach our core, and then we are the supreme bliss. So Kathopanishad, as some of us may recollect, is talking about this process of peeling off the layers of Kshetra, the body, matter, till we reach the Purush or Brahman or God within us. And then that is the direct experience of God. There is no speculation, no argument, and no logic. That is the final merger. And this is called moksha or liberation, which is our goal. So the true knowledge ends in attaining God. And see, normally as practitioners, we are very confused about our spiritual goals. You talk about material goals, or goals in the world, we have complete clarity that in 3 years I should be a manager. After that, I should be a vice president, the president, and so on and so forth, having my own company. So we are very clear about our professional path. We are very clear about what all countries and cities, etc., we should be traveling. What should my salary be? Everything is very clear to us. But when it comes to our spiritual path, we're not very clear what a jnani is, what is moksha. And because we are not clear, it it deters us from moving on to the path. The path of the world, where the goals are very clearly seen, appears to be easier. So we go on the worldly path again and again, which is the path of return, which we covered, I think, in chapter 7 or 8. I've forgotten, the path of return and the path of no return. So we go on that path, the path of return, which is the path of birth and rebirth, which is replete with sorrows and conditioning. So our mind is resting on the world, whereas a jnani's mind is resting on God, and then the jnani is functioning in the world. Now, towards the end of the verse, Lord Krishna is saying categorically that these values, the 20 values that we have covered, this is the last line of this verse, these 20 values constitute knowledge. And all that opposes to these values or is contrary to these qualities is ignorance. So the 20 values that we have covered is Gyan, and anything which opposes it or anything which is not there is Agyan or ignorance. So in short, these qualities are filters to purify us. See, just as we all have aqua guards at home, why do we have them? The water that we are getting actually when it starts from the Himalayas, it's pure. But as it moves down, it starts gathering impurities. And by the time it reaches our water supply, which is connected to our home, it's so impure that we have to start putting a mechanism to purify that water. Okay. And it is effective up to a particular point. In fact, it may not be able to remove all the impurities and bring it to that original state with which it started when ice had melted. Okay. So AquaGuard attempts to restore water to its original state of purity. So these qualities that we have covered, these 20 qualities, are like filters which try to remove the impurities from ourselves. And Krishna's statement when he's saying that this is Gyan and other than this is Agyan. So that statement is underscoring the importance of these values and how they constitute that which is to be known. And with that, we will end today's session.